All right, so it's meant for everybody to recite along with Michael, and you can turn off your microphone so there's no feedback when we're doing that. But it's the practice calls for doing it out loud and along with the pace of the umze. So if you can do that, is really really good. It brings in the connection. It's part of the practice. It's where we start. Okay.
Okay. Altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Tibetan? Tibetan. Dag lang dag war je pedrea no par je pedek. Darpa dang tam che ken pe bar du cho par je patam che kitso je pe. Manam ka dang nyam pe sem chen tam che dewa dang den. Dug nyal dang drill nur du la na me payang. Dag par zog pe chung chu rin po she to parja. Action bodhicitta prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. De che du sang ma ge ki bar du nyagi sam ge walako. Ma she bar du nyagi sam ge walako. Du de ring ne sung te ni ma sang da sam gi bar du nyagi sam ge walako. The Long Refuge Prayer. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidam. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Drin chen sawa dang gu par che pe pel den lama dampa nam la kyub si chio. Yidam kil kor gila chog nam la kyab su chio. Sangye chom den de nam la kyab su chio. Dampe cho nam la kyab su chio. Pagpegin dum nam la kyab su chio. Pawo kandro chok yong sung me chok yeshe. Ki chen dang den pa nam la kyab su chio. Taking the Bodhisattva vow. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Jang Chub Nying Por Chi Kibar, Sangye Namla Kyab Suchi, Chodang Jang Chub Sempayi, Shoglalyang De Shin Kyab Suchi, Jitar Nyongi De Sheki, Jang Chub Tugni Kepadang, Jang Chub Sempe La Pala, Vedarim Shen Nepata, Beijing Drola Pendondu, Jang Chub Seni Kergijing, Beijing Duna La Pala, Rimpajin Du La Parji. The short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Shoki Chonam La Changchu Bardu Dagi Kapsuchi Dagi Jin Soki Pe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchir Sangye Drupar Sho. The four immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Tibetan. Manam kadang yampe semchen tam che dewa dang dewe gyudan den partur chik. Dugnal dang dugnal gi gyudang dral war tur chik. Dugnal me pe dewa dang mi dral war tur chik. Ye ring chak dang yi dang dral we dang nom la ne par tur chik.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. If anybody needs a Buddhism 101 booklet that has their prayers in it and so on, send me an email and with your email address, and I'll be glad to mail it to you, a printed copy. If you want it online, we can give it to you online as well. So, Jackie, nice to see you. Welcome. And Tom, I see that you're there, and Soho, I see that you're there, and Zara, good to see you. So I feel like I'm Miss Nancy in Romper Room. I see all of you there. Everybody is there. Okay. All right. So tonight we're talking about Learning Buddhism book, and we're on chapter 8, which is a description of the 3 vehicles. So we're going to talk about that. The 3 vehicles are the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana. Yana in Sanskrit means vehicle, or it means the way to. It's the method, it is the practices and so on that we are following to be able to get to enlightenment. So, of course, an analogy would be if we want to get to some destination, if we said that New York, for instance, was enlightenment and we all wanted to get there, we could get there by maybe taking a bicycle, and that would be the slow route to get there. We could take a car, and that would be a faster way to get there. But we could also take a train, and that might be faster yet to be able to get there. But the result would be that we would get to enlightenment. So, not that either one of these is faster or slower than another, but they are maybe have more complexity to them and so on. And you'll see that they all work together. These three vehicles work together. When the Buddha first began to teach, he taught the Four Noble Truths, and the main thing that he had to be able to convey to all the disciples that were now following him and so on was to be able to discipline their lives, to be able to give up many of the things that they were doing, many of the ways in which they lived and so on, and to be able to focus their lives, focus everything that they do on the Dharma, on their spirituality, on their practices, on receiving the teachings and so on. So the first part of the teachings was to instill discipline. Then after some time, he was also teaching Mahayana. The discipline is expressed in what we call the Hinayana, or the fundamental teachings. Sometimes it's considered to be the lower teachings, but that's really not. That's too pejorative. It's really the very fundamental teachings. It's teaching the discipline to be able to attain enlightenment. Then those who are able to establish discipline within their lives and so on, then can start beginning to visualize and be able to understand the relationship of being involved with society at large, not just a smaller microcosm of society as might be practiced in the monastery or in the Sangha groups and everything that was first formed around the Buddha. But now there began to be, larger groups, and so this Mahayana, the great way, the great path, the great vehicle is the middle way teaching, and this is when the idea of being able to perform enlightenment, to attain enlightenment, not for your own personal benefit, as we do in the Hinayana, but to do this for the benefit of all beings. So we're doing it for others. And the concept of the Bodhisattva, the holy enlightened being, was introduced in the Mahayana. Then, at the same time, but not everybody was hearing it, the Buddha taught at three levels simultaneously. Some people would only hear the Hinayana teachings, the discipline teachings. Some people would hear that, but also hear the Mahayana teachings, the middle way teachings. Ram, I think you need to mute your microphone, please. Whoa. Sounds like he's getting crushed there. Okay. So the middle way, the middle way teachings were people in the Mahayana, but then he was also teaching in a very profound way and teaching the wisdom of the Buddha. And this was the Vajrayana way. This is the Vajrayana vehicle. Vajrayana means the wisdom vehicle. So some people would hear that. And so there's many stories about this. We'll relate a couple of them as we go along. So if anybody has any questions as we proceed along this, don't hesitate to speak up, and we'll try and answer whatever questions we can. So this first path, the Hinayana, is called the common vehicle because all the different practitioners, all the different vehicles after this have to have the discipline to be able to get to the other places. So the common vehicle is this discipline vehicle. Then the second one, as I said, was the path of the Bodhisattva. And the next one was the extraordinary vehicle of the Tantra, or of the wisdom Tantra, which we'll talk more about. So the Hinayana might be referred to as the lesser vehicle, the Mahayana as the greater vehicle, and the Vajrayana as the secret mantra vehicle, which we're going to talk about, like I said. So in this common vehicle, the Buddha said, do not commit any wrongdoings. Perfectly engage in virtue. Completely tame your own mind. So what he's saying is, you've got to change your life. You've got to be able to commit to being able to be a virtuous person, to do good deeds, to engage in this virtue, and this, to be mindful of what virtue is and what non-virtue is, and to make the choice for virtue, and that to completely tame your mind, because it's our mind, our monkey mind that we talk about, that's jumping around from one thought to another, chasing one thought after another, that causes us to have attachments and to have aversions against things that are generated, that are created in our mind. So we need to be able to tame our mind. We have to have a method or a series of methods to be able to do that, because our mind is so powerful and influenced by so many things that we have to have a number of systems that can help us to do that. So generally, the Dharma teaching that the Buddha brought to us had all those teachings included in them. So as we move along through our teachings and our practices, we learn more and more about the sophistication of the different practices, and how they work, and why they work, and how we can become the embodiment of the result of those teachings. So it's, do not commit any wrongdoing, do only virtue, and tame your own mind. Those are three important, very, very important sayings that came from the Buddha. So this Hinayana, this lesser vehicle, this common vehicle, this vehicle of discipline, is the starting point and maintained in the Mahayana and the Vajrayana practices. It focuses on differentiation between virtuous and non-virtuous. And with this, we abandon wrongdoings and practice virtue. So we have to understand what virtue is. Virtue is doing good deeds. Virtue is having altruistic motivation. Virtue is bodhicitta. When we talk about the holy enlightened mind, bodhicitta, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So having a sense of propriety, having a sense of responsibility to ourselves and to society in general, and so on, to practice virtue. And virtue does not bring harm. There's virtue of the body, there's virtue of the speech, and there's virtue of the mind. So we need to learn that, and we need to learn what the non-virtues are. So tonight we're not going to have time to be able to go into that. We spend another chapter just talking about virtue and non-virtue. But we have to familiarize ourselves with that idea of that, between virtue and non-virtue. All of us have an idea, have concepts of what we think virtue is, and so on. And we need to address it at a very, very basic level and so that we really can recognize the non-virtue that creeps into our lives, because we are all here not because of our virtue per se, but we're also here because of our non-virtue. We're here as an opportunity to be able to rectify our non-virtue, to be able to recognize it and to be able to overcome it, and then to exalt our virtues and so on, to become better and better and better human beings for the benefit of the enlightenment of other beings. So in the beginning, in the Hinayana, we're actually doing it a little bit selfishly. We're doing it independently of others. We're first learning to do it for ourselves. So an analogy here is, when you go into an airplane and they're giving you the instructions with the mask, the oxygen mask that come down, they always say you got to put the mask on yourself first, because you got to help yourself to be able to breathe properly before you can help somebody else. So that's applied here too. Before we can help somebody else, we have to be firm in what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So in this case, it's a stability in our practices, a stability in our goals. And then when we have that, then we can start working with other people and so on. So we have to look for our own enlightenment in the beginning, but there comes this time when we recognize that is I'm suffering as long as everybody else is suffering. So if I continue on this path to enlightenment, it becomes a selfish enlightenment. And one of the goals of Buddhism is to undo any selfishness that we have, to practice selflessness. So we make this critical decision at this time to be able to shift away from our own personal enlightenment, and now everything we do is for the benefit of the enlightenment of other beings. So in the beginning, though, it is for our own benefit. So this is the Hinayana. And we've talked in the past, when we talked about the jewel ornamental liberation, and the very beginning part, we say that there are these practitioners, or these students, these disciples of the Buddha, who are doing this for their own benefit, and they're dubious about it. They're not quite sure that they have the right motivation, making the right commitments, and so on. And these are called the hearers, or the Shravakas. In our prayers, we talk about the Shravakas, and these are the hearers. And they're listening to the practices, they're listening to the teachings, but they have doubts within themselves. They have doubts of the system. There are others who have kind of overcome some of those doubts, but now they have some attainment of enlightenment. They have some glimpse of enlightenment, and they're called the solitary realizers. They have some awareness, but they keep it to themselves. They're not sharing it with others, and they do this out of an arrogance that they have, that they feel like they're better than others. Maybe they're feeling subliminally that they're not worthy to be able to teach or to be able to help other beings, but they overcompensate with their arrogance for that. But the point is that it's still a selfishness that they have about themselves. It's about their own enlightenment. They are called the solitary realizers, or the Pratyeka Buddhas. So you'll see the name Shravaka and you'll see the name Pratyeka Buddhas in many of our prayers. The Pratyeka Buddhas means their own individual enlightenment, and not concerned with the enlightenment of others. So this is all within this Hinayana, that they're learning to adopt practices of austerity, of virtue, and so on. You got to remember that 2,600 years ago, when the Buddha first began to teach, who were the people that he was teaching? You know, they were all kinds of liars. They were all kinds of thieves. They were all kinds of deviants. They were murderers and so on. And these were the people that were in the land. I mean, for them, that was normal life and so on. So he had to have a way to be able to get them to be able to focus. So one of the first things he would do is to have them come into the monastery or to become monastics, to become monks. And most of them were men, but not exclusively. There was a lot of women who became nuns at the same time. And one thing that he had them do was to shave their heads, because so much of our ego is tied up in our appearance, and so much of our appearance is tied up in our hair and the way we groom ourselves and so on like that. So in order to be able to make ourselves like everybody else was shaving our head. That's where that comes from. The second thing was to take off their clothes, whether they were rags or they were, silks and beautiful clothes of wealthy people. He had them all take off their clothes and put on robes, the same kind of robes. Everybody wore the same kind of robes. So this became another equalizing feature between all the people that were in the Sangha and so on. And then, of course, he had them eating together, and he had them receiving teachings together, and he had them practicing together. So it was creating this community of people coming together that was this hinayana, was this discipline, practicing this discipline and so on. So their time was all consumed with this. There was very little time for them to go out and do other things, to get in trouble, so to speak. And that he was focusing their mind one pointedly, in their devotion to him in the beginning, and to recognize virtue, to understand virtue. And this was a large part of his teachings at that time. So we've talked about the emotions. We talked about that in the time that the Buddha was teaching, he spent 50 years traveling around northern India, going to village and meeting people. And during that time, he had a basic message that he was giving everybody, but these ordinary beings would come to him with their problems. And he would, talk with them, and he found, that they all, were having these emotions. Most of their problems were rooted in emotions that they had. The emotions are formulated here in the brain, and those emotions cover up our true nature, which is in the heart, which is in our heart center. So he found that all these beings, they're bringing to him all these different emotions, or all these different myriad combinations of what became the 5 poisons. We found that the emotions are built up of ignorance, they're built up of passion or a desire, they're built up of hatred, they're built up of jealousy, and they're built up of greediness or pridefulness. So those 5 basic poisons and all their myriad combinations make up 84,000 emotions, is the number that they came up with. So, how real that number is, I couldn't say, but I could say that I know that there are so many variations to it. It is an unbelievable number. It is a vast number of people and the emotions that we come up with, and many of them, because of the fundamental poison of ignorance, we don't even know that we have these things. We're ignorant of our emotions. We're ignorant of the causes of the emotions. So that's how fundamental it is. And so the Buddha began to teach at that level, to be able to help beings to recognize their emotions as being the cause of the blockages that are keeping them from their true nature, which is their Buddha nature. Because that was one of the things that he was teaching. The fundamental teaching is that we all have Buddha nature. We all have this true nature, within ourselves, but it's blocked up. We can't recognize it because of the defilements. So the analogy we always use is it's like a diamond. It's a diamond with many aspects to it, but the problem is the diamond is all encrusted in filth, is encrusted in the emotions, is encrusted in defilement and confusions and so on. And so we can't see the diamond. We don't recognize the diamond. So slowly the practices are meant to be able to break away those that dirt that is covering that up, to allow the light from the diamond to come shining through and so on. So we say that as we do that, we have glimpses of our true nature, of that diamond nature that we have within ourselves. All this is done in the Hinayana. All this is done in this fundamental discipline level of being able to recognize oneself as a Buddha, as a truly awakened one. So we do this. It's a progressive system that the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, was able to devise. His genius was being able to articulate how he attained enlightenment. And this is what he began to teach, how he attained enlightenment. And this is called the Dharma teachings. And the Dharma itself is a pathway. So we differentiate this when we see it in print. It's got a capital D and not always refers to the Buddha's Dharma. A Dharma with a little d might mean many other different mundane kinds of pathways, to be able to have a family, to be able to have a career, to be able to learn things in school, pathways and so on. But the capital D Dharma is the pathway of the Buddha to become enlightened. So we go back to this many times. We talk about that we go around in circles all the time, teaching the same things over and over again. And at different periods, we're able to go into more depth with those basic teachings than other times. Right now, this is an introduction to these three vehicles. And the first one here is the Hinayana, which is the discipline. The next comes the Mahayana, the middle way, the Mahayana. Maha, M-A-H-A, is a Sanskrit word that means great. So you'll see it expressed in many, many, many prayers and many, many practices that we do. Maha this, Maha that. Mahayana is the great vehicle. The yana is the vehicle. So this is what we are trying to understand. So this great vehicle has within it this, it's more importance here is placed upon the mind than on action. So we're developing the mind more than the action. In the Hinayana, we were trying to do virtuous actions. We're trying to keep away from doing non-virtue. So it's very energized at that level. Now in the Mahayana, we're spending more time meditating and developing, a higher level of virtue, the reasons why we do things more than what it is that we need to do. So it says, if you have a virtuous mind, the body and speech will follow. Whatever is practiced within a virtuous mind becomes virtue. So we say that within us, we have our physical body, which is represented at the crown or at the forehead. The crown of the forehead is our physical body. And then we have our speech, which is our the intellect. The intellect is articulated through our speech. So when we're talking about the speech, we're talking about our intellectual mind, our brain mind, and so on. Very important. And we need to be able to understand that distinction. And then when we talk about the big mind, now we're talking about our heart center. And we're talking about something that is beyond our physical and beyond our intellectual. And this is where our true nature is. This is where this indestructible diamond is in the heart center. And this true nature is the master of the physical and master of the intellectual. A master of the physical, of the body, and the master of the speech, a master of the intellectual. So when we're talking about opening up our big mind, means that we are endeavoring to open up through meditation. That meditation is the key to this, because we have to be able to transcend all the confusions, all the emotions of the intellectual mind that are affecting the physical body. They're affecting the physical body. So you can see this many times. How much time do we spend about thinking about our physical body, looking in the mirror, looking good, getting nice clothes, being able to do certain things with certain people and so on. And it's all based on our body. We work out, we condition and so on, and do that. Sometimes we get sick. And when we get sick, we don't feel like doing a lot of these things, and we don't take care of ourselves. So our intellectual mind is developing our skills, developing our ability to be able to have relationships, be able to develop our careers and so on like that, and to be able to think properly and contemplate properly. If we have a good physical body and we have a good intellectual mind, we regard ourselves as being pretty healthy. But if we have a intellectual mind that is all twisted and turned up with neuroticism and confusion and fearfulness and emotions and all these things, then it affects our body, and we don't feel like being healthy. We don't look good, and we can see that there's a direct relationship with the way that we're thinking and the way that we feel physically. If we do exercise, it helps us to want to learn more and want to do more. If we're cloudy in the head, if we have fears and confusions, then we don't feel like taking care of the body and looking good. However, we have a third body, and the third body is our spiritual body. And this is in the heart center. This is the mind, the big mind. This is the little mind. So if we have this big mind that is aware of all the confusions, is aware of all the emotions, is aware of all the possibilities that we can fall into and so on, that we have a way of being able to help the physical body and help the intellectual body to rise above itself, because we have a tendency to hold on and grasp and cling to the physical body and cling to the intellectual body. But if we can get a objective point of view, then we can begin to see that there we have this transcendent nature. And by doing this, we become a complete human being. And the analogy here is like our two legs, or rather our physical body is like one leg of a stool, and our intellectual body is like a second leg of a stool. But you can't balance yourself on a two-legged stool. But if you have your third leg, if you have your spiritual body, now you have a three-legged stool, and now you have the ability to balance yourself and to interact between those three bodies, to stabilize yourself. And we say that we become a complete human being this way. So the Mahayana introduces this to us, shows us this, directs us to this, is introducing us to our our true mind, the great vehicle. So we begin to understand that it's this mind that is the master, and the physical body and the intellectual body are following the big mind. If we have this big mind, if we have this awareness of our spirituality, now we don't have physical ailments like we sometimes do. The neurotic tendencies go down. The neuroticism doesn't affect our health, affect our body, and so on. So we see all this working together, these three things working together. If we injure ourselves, if we hurt ourselves, or we get sick, some disease or something, we can't think properly. And if we can't think properly, it's very difficult to be able to work with the mind very well. But if we have a good, stable, healthy mind, and we understand that we do get injured, that we do get sick, but we also can get over it, that we don't cling to the illness, that we can get over it, that time period will pass, will heal, and we'll be able to restore ourselves back as a complete human being. So we see that these three bodies are interactive with each other. It's a very important point that we need to be able to focus on. The Mahayana is what introduces us to this. This is the mind. It focuses on taming and taking control of the mind, taming the mind and taking control of the mind. In the Hinayana, we talked about do no evil, do only good deeds, and tame your mind. Now with the Mahayana, now we're really seeing what that means, taming the mind, what that really means. So in the Mahayana, we recognize that during the time that we were in Mahayana, that we were in this selfish mode, that we were only thinking about ourselves and we weren't thinking about others. And there were times when we realized that other beings are still suffering and that we were vulnerable to that. We recognize that because they're suffering, it hurts me because I love those people and they love me. I want them to love me. I want to love them. And if they're suffering, that I can't be free. I can't be enlightened. So in the Mahayana, we begin to recognize this. And we then come to the realization that we cannot be free. We cannot be enlightened completely until all others are enlightened as well. And that we take on the responsibility to be able to not only help ourselves to attain freedom, to attain liberation, to attain enlightenment, but we also have to work at it with others and help them to realize it too. And by doing this, we are developing a higher level of our selflessness, because there are many things that are hidden to us because we still have ignorance. We still have that emotion, that root ignorance. But by working with others, sometimes we can see that ignorance in them that we won't accept within ourselves until we see it in somebody else. Then we say, oh, you know what? I have that too. Oh, I see that hatred in them. Oh, I see that desire in them. I see that jealousy in them. I see that pridefulness, greed in them. You know what? I see it in myself too. Before I was blinded by it because I was selfishly clinging to the fact that, oh, I can be a Buddha in the Hinayana vehicle. But in the Mahayana vehicle, we see that we need each other. And we see that there's no difference between us. The only differences between us are those that we create for ourselves.
Lance,
Yes, sir.
don't you have to make choices among people?
Sure.
And I guess what I'm saying is there are people who, I don't want to say they're bad help, but that is probably what I am saying. They're just not open to it. They will not receive it. And you can be who you are. You can be your Buddha nature, and you can focus on that and all that that means in your behaviors and in your practices. But
Yes.
most of the people I see in life, and having been one of them for so long, are not really receptive to that. There may come a time when they are. And I think it takes a power of discernment to know
Well, that's absolutely true.
who you can help on that journey and who you need to bless and wish them on their way.
Well, it's absolutely true. And if I can answer the question, or I know there's a question there, you're making a statement about this, an observation about this, and it goes to the very first prayer that we recite when we begin to do our practices and teachings and so on, the altruistic motivation. And basically what it's saying is, it's easy for us to love and to have compassion for our families. It's easy for us to love our friends and the people that are around our immediate community. But those strangers out there that are considering us to be enemies, or maybe we're considering them to be enemies, to be able to have good wishes for them is very difficult. But that's what we need to do. That needs to be our motivation. That despite the fact that they're strangers, despite the fact that they have ill will towards us or to our families and to our community and so on, we still have to, at a spiritual level, be able to reach them, to be able to communicate with them. The physical body has limits. The intellectual brain has limits. And if we stay within those limits, we'll never make too many inroads with those people, because they're going to be turned off by us. We're going to be turned off by them. We're not going to have the wisdom to be able to break through their consciousness and so on, nor have the will to be able to do it in our own consciousness. But if we develop the spiritual body is boundless. It's limitless. It can go, it is everywhere simultaneously. There's no time, there's no space. We are omnipresent at all places, at all times. And if we can recognize that spiritual power, that spiritual ability, now we have a way to be able to communicate with those beings. And they may not even realize it in the beginning. But if they are casting dispersions upon us, if they are coming at us with their ill will and so on, but we are not allowing ourselves to return that ill will, if we are taking it and turning it around, negating it, or not negating it, but neutralizing it, and showing them love and compassion through our heart center, through our spirituality, that's how we have the mechanism to be able to work with people that we would otherwise be unable to reach. And that's hard. It's hard work, but that's where the work is. If there's a supreme being who has nothing but love and compassion for all beings, would that supreme being, want to be able to have anger at beings? Or would that supreme being recognize the suffering that those beings are going through and want to do something to help those beings? So we have to look at if there's a supreme being or not. It doesn't matter. It's within ourselves that we have that love and we have that compassion, and we need to be able to actualize that for the benefit of other beings. And this is what it means in the Mahayana. This is what the realization of that is in this Mahayana pathway. And what we become, this has got a name for it. The name for this is the Bodhisattva. Bodhi means enlightenment in Sanskrit, and Sat is a being, and Sattva is a holy being. So it's the enlightened holy being, the Bodhisattva, that we are actualizing, we are activating our holiness within ourselves for the benefit of other beings. And our life changes. This is a transformation. We're doing this for the benefit of others. We're not doing it for our own benefit. We're doing it for the benefit of others. In doing this for others, it's helping us because we have impurities that we need to be able to recognize and work on ourselves. And it's through doing these for others that we are actually being able to overcome those impurities. We're being able to neutralize those impurities within ourselves. So it's a very important point. And this is the point of the Bodhisattva. This is the point of the Mahayana. This is where we begin to do that. Does that make some sense?
Yes.
Go ahead. You have another comment?
It's easier said than done. And that,
But does that, all right, I understand. Does that negate it?
no,
Okay.
but
So what are you going to do? You're going to rationalize not doing it?
no, where my issue really is among certain people in my life, certain friends who I say, who tell me, I don't want to be anywhere near these people. I don't want to be around them. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to. And then my response is something like, which I think is a bodhisattva-like response, I hope it is when you do that, you fail to recognize their humanity. And I end up in a flat spin with it because I have people come back and say, well, they're not acting fully human. They're denying.
So what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you?
Whoa.
Why?
When they say that to me, what does it mean?
Well, when you go into that flat spin with them, what does that mean to you? You know what? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing
I'm
that?
not being effective in
So
letting.
if you're not being effective, then what do you got to do?
Well, I don't know what else I can do. What I cannot do is imitate them.
That's true. Why?
Because that's denying someone else's humanity just because I think that they're.
Well, no, there's another reason there. Because if you become just like them, you become non-virtuous just like them.
Well, that's true, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
I have enough trouble with my own virtue. I can't.
So I'm trying to get to the point. I'm trying to get you to the point of what it is that you need to do to be able to overcome that impasse.
What does overcoming the impasse mean? Does it mean, is it something about changing me, or is it something about getting through to the people who are expressing hostility to other humans?
And I mean, there's many ways of explaining it. One of it is liberating yourself from the attachment to that or the aversion to that, from whichever point of view that you're looking at that, you know? And so the fundamental thing is that if you recognize that there is a system in place to be able to help you to do that, and it may be idealistic, you may regard it as being idealistic and maybe too idealistic for you at the present time. But at the same time, it doesn't negate your engaging harder into it, practicing more to be able to rise yourself above the being pulled down, to be able to compensate for that being pulled into that flat spin. So the answer to it is practicing more.
Well, I understand. I see that, but where that leaves me is with me comfortably feeling that I'm doing the right things but not changing the hostile world around me.
Well, then if you're feeling sad, I understand that. And that's feeling compassion. I understand that. There's a story about the deities, a couple of the deities, the deity of Avalokiteshvara, the one who sees with compassionate eyes. His Tibetan name is Shenrezig. You may be more familiar with that name, Shenrezig or Avalokiteshvara. And Avalokiteshvara is standing, and he's got 1,000 arms and 1,000 hands, and in each of his hands he's got an eye, and he's got an eye at his forehead, and he's got his 2 eyes at his head and everything. And he sees all the suffering of all the beings in samsara, in the phenomenal world. And he's spending many, many kalpas, long periods of time, and feeling like people are still doing the same things. And he begins to cry. Tears come to his eyes. And one tear becomes Tara, the mother of all the Buddhas. And the other one becomes another Tara, the actualizer of liberation. And these tears say to him, these Taras say to him, he says, I see that you have this terrible job in being able to help all these people, and you have such compassion for them. And I see that you're not, it doesn't seem to be helping as many people as you would like it to. I see that, but I'm going to help you. And what that is saying is that there is this family of enlightened ones that are in this body of enlightenment that is there for us to be able to have support, have strength, have wisdom, have courage to move on when things are very, very difficult. So even the bodhisattvas, because Shenrezig, Avalokiteshvara, is one of the great bodhisattvas, So even at that level, there is frustration. And the lesson is that we just got to keep working, and that we have more, we have support, and we have to bring in the support. We have to invite the support. We have to do the practices. We have to study. We have to contemplate. It is an active process. This is not a passive process. Change comes from the activity of liberation, of recognizing, overcoming, and bearing the fruit of that liberation. It's really a simple answer to a complex question that has so many nuances and so many myriad combinations of things. So we may not be at this point in time feeling that way, but I know you, and I know that a year ago you felt worse about it than you do now, because a year ago you didn't even know it. Now you realize it, but you're realizing more about what is happening, and feeling a little bit helpless about it. But the message is still the same. We have to still keep working at it. We're going around the circle. We're learning more about the circle. Does that make any sense, or you still have a question?
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Gary, are you going through something right now that you're thinking of, and when you're asking this question or posing it to Lance?
It's nothing personal. It's the same thing that we're all going through in one way or the other. And
so what do you want?
It's the exasperation of seeing people when I'm around, when I'm with the Sangha, for instance.
Yeah. So now you have to have compassion for yourself. Compassion, because you're suffering. You're the one who's suffering right now. Can you see that?
Yes.
So you have to have compassion for yourself.
What I'm seeing or not seeing is I'm not seeing the turn, the shift. I got the shift. That's a word I will use. A shift.
Time will be the test of all things. You'll see.
And I feel very small in beginning to feel that I'm getting to know myself in a way that I haven't in all these years. And feeling that sometimes I can't get through to those, even those closest to me, that this rage that sweeps through the land like a prairie fire.
Well, you may not be able to, but the question is, do you feel that way? Do you see the joy? Do you see the loving kindness? Do you see the compassion? Do you see the equanimity? Do you see it?
Well, yes.
Okay.
But
so patience.
Gary, you are not obligated to finish the work, but neither can you desist from it.
Yes.
This is, we haven't said it tonight, but we've said it many times in the past. This is the ocean of suffering. We're not going to be able to, heal everybody. We're not going to be able to change everybody. And it is a statement of an appearance, of a phenomenal nature. And if we cling to the reality of the phenomenal nature, we create this suffering for ourselves. We have to transcend, we have to liberate ourselves from our human points of view. And that takes meditation to do that, the practice again. It's practice harder.
Hey, Gary, it's funny that I appreciate your willingness to put that type of complex question out there. Because of the type of work I do, I'm constantly having, we'll call them opportunities to practice daily, sometimes multiple times in a day. And this is something I've started saying to myself and internally, get comfortable with being uncomfortable right now, because I'm learning, it's like these layers of the inside of myself. I'm discovering, kind of like Lance is saying, it's like a progression of we're learning through our experiences. And I'm realizing I'm not comfortable in these moments with some of this stuff, right? And questioning, ignorance is bliss, right? Not knowing sometimes, not knowing and not being awake to some of these things. But that's sort of something I say to myself privately when I'm struggling with what we're learning to do with our minds and physical actions. I don't know if that's helpful, but I say that sometimes multiple times a day, Gary, just to kind of get through difficult moments that can be, I think, actualized wisdom through patience, through multiple practices, right, Lance? Daily practice.
Yeah, yeah. And right now, I understand your frustration, but I also understand that time and your commitment to be able to work through this is the answer to it. If you give in to the frustration, it's just going to devolve into, more frustration, and you're not going to get anywhere. But if you continue to find the joy and to find the loving kindness, compassion, and so on that we talk about all the time, then, you know, slowly, 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 you're going to be able to see, you know, how changes have been made in other people's lives, but most importantly in your life too, you know, and you'll see that. And you've already seen that. I know you've already seen that.
In connection with what Zara was saying, at least what I understood, the need to be comfortable at some level with discomfort. And a while ago, you mentioned doubt. I don't remember the exact context for that, but some level of doubt, some level of uncertainty is, I'm asking, is a growth stage, is it not? I mean,
Absolutely. We go through doubt all the way up to the time that we become enlightened.
right.
Finally, we give way. You know, we overcome the doubt.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're adjusting Gary's dilemma here, but I think as Zara is doing, you know, we need to support and identify and empathize with the valley that he's trying to get out of. If we don't have some valleys, we don't. Which, you know, the prayer about I don't know for the word avoiding suffering and the causes of suffering. If we had no suffering, we would have no growth, would we not? I mean, I may be connecting things that are unconnectable.
Well, no, I mean, this is the ocean of suffering.
Yeah.
You know, this life is full of suffering, you know, but that doesn't mean we got to make that our whole life has to become suffering. If we surrender to give into the suffering, you know.
But Gary, are you finding this discussion relevant to the concern that you raised?
Yes, very. I think it's exactly the concern. It's, but it is coming around to, I can find peace in meditation. I can find quiet. But then all of us have to go back out into samsara. You know, I have lived with and worked around.
But you got to take that bliss with you when you go back into samsara. You got to take the meditation with you. It doesn't stay on the pillow. You got to take it with you. It's you who has to change.
Well, let me give an example to you then. This hasn't happened to me recently, thank goodness. But you're at peace with yourself, you're at peace with others, and you care about others. You are on the path. And that path takes you onto the subway, as it has taken me, not recently, but it has. And you find someone attacking someone else, and then you end up in the middle of the attack with all of your peace, with all your centeredness. And in the middle of that attack, to stop it and help someone, you conduct violence. And the violence is over, someone is saved, and then you sit back down in Mahamudra. What sense does that make?
Well, there's many contributing factors to that, and mitigating factors to the severity of the karma. That if you had to do violence for that, you know, to to be able to save somebody's life and everything. The bottom line is you have to take responsibility for that. And if you're willing to sacrifice maybe some of the work that you have done to attain a pure level by not doing non-virtue, that you have to say, okay, I knocked myself down a notch or two or three or four, but I'm going to accept that as because I did help somebody, and I'm going to work myself back up, and I'm going to liberate. I'm going to make that a lesson for the person that I had to create that suffering for, that I had to be violent against. I liberated that person. Maybe I helped them to show that through my compassion and through my my reluctance to do this, that they will recognize that. And that again comes from the heart. You may not be able to intellectualize that, but from the heart you can do that.
So that would be helpful to Gary or anybody in that situation to think of it in that way. But I don't know that that really I think the notion that that really helps the guy that was attacking somebody is a stretch at best. I mean, I don't, maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe it's what, I don't know.
You got to
The
deal
only
with
thing
it.
that I
We're
can
dealing.
do-
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gary.
The only thing that I could do, and this has been some time ago, but the only thing that I could do was not let it change me.
Correct.
I'm absolutely certain that it did not change the attacker. I'm not sure how much the victim appreciated it. Nobody seemed to like anybody, and I just went on to work. But I found some sense of centeredness in that you did the right thing. But did I say, brothers, let's come together. This is not right. They were not receptive to that, especially the one.
No, you got to do it you got to do spiritual work.
See, the world is.
It's not an intellectual. It's not an intellectual work. It's a spiritual work here.
You can be meditating. You can be having literature in your hand, and then the world intervenes. And then that doesn't mean that you say, after having that experience, well, if this is what's going to happen, why am I wasting my time going to Sangha, and why am I reading? Well, I don't do that.
Where is spirit? Is spirit up there?
No, it's within myself.
It's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I retreated back into, but I did not forget what I saw and what I've seen many times at this point in my life, and so have you. So I do this, and I hope for better, but I don't see the world around me changing. Maybe there's some immediate parts of my world that change because of what I do. But I don't see the world around us changing right now. I see it, chasing itself.
Well, we're in a difficult time, and it's always been a difficult time. So it's being attached to that, you see, that you're clinging on to that, and you're looking for your reward.
Well, I understand the point to make, but one doesn't really have to cling these days. It sort of descends upon you.
Well,
Gary, it's so interesting listening to you describe like your perspective, and it's very humbling for me to like listen to other people's perspectives. I actually am very hopeful. Like I see like sort of a spiritual evolution of the human culture upon us because of and I think some of it is helped and harmed in good and bad ways, but I see like the possibility of people waking up, if that makes sense, to being kinder, compassionate, and they may not come to it through the way we are in a more structured way, but that actually just learning to be a kinder human, and tolerant human. I actually see things, I don't know, I'm hopeful. And it's interesting. I appreciate you sharing your perspective though, because it's helpful for me to hear what other people's lenses and experiences are. It gives me context for people actually, because the way I think isn't always the way other people think. So I just wanted to add that in, because actually I am hopeful. I do believe that good things will be happening. I think it's a natural evolution of humanity, actually, that's happening slowly in front of us, very slowly, but it's happening.
Okay, well, I think we need to move on. Gary, if you want to talk more about it, later on over the phone or something, we can certainly do that,
Oh, right.
But I think we all expressed something that was really good, and I think you expressed it yourself really good. Now it's just a matter of living with it.
Simple as that.
So here, where we were talking about the mind. The mind is most important, the big mind. The big mind can be overpowered by the little mind. The little mind are the emotions, are the confusions. So if we allow those confusions to block this up, then we're feeling unhappy. We're feeling sorrow. We're feeling suffering. We're not feeling liberated. So it's like carrying around a ball and chain. But inside of that is this true nature, and the thing is to recognize that what's muddying it up, and to be able to chip away at it, to wash it away, to clear it away, so you can restore the recognition of that which is within you, that pure light that is within you. So each of us has to do that in our own way. We all have our sets of conditions and causes that we have to work through that are all part of those 84,000 emotions. Okay, so working on the mind. So the introduction to this is in the Mahayana. So first was the discipline, then comes the introduction to the great vehicle, the middle way teachings. It's not the extremes. We talk about that there's an extreme of nihilism where nothing matters. There's an extreme of eternalism where everything is rosy. There's an extreme of individualism, egoism, where it's I, me, mine. And then there's the extreme of materialism, that it's the one with all the toys wins. But the middle way is in the middle of all those things. It's not negating those things, it's balancing those things and not going to the extremes. And that takes recognition, it takes practice to be able to find the balance and deal with the vicissitudes of the changes of life. I've heard about, people who are very successful, wonderful people. They have done great things all their life, peaceful people and everything. And then a year before they die, somebody breaks into their house and stabs them with a knife, fights them and stabs them with a knife, almost kills them. Where's the karma for that? How does that happen to this guy? Who expects something like that to happen to this guy? You know who I'm talking about? George Harrison. One of the Beatles. Had everything in the world, and a year before he dies, this is what happens. And he's dying with cancer. So we go through these things, I don't know exactly how he reacted to that, except to subdue the guy. But I don't know what happened afterwards. His wife got cut. It was terrible. So we never can be so how would I say, so confident that we have, risen above it all. So now we move on to the third vehicle. The third vehicle is the secret mantra vehicle, or the Vajrayana. It's got several different names. Vajrayana, Vajra in Sanskrit means indestructible, the indestructible vehicle. Secret mantra means that it is this, it is the language of being a Buddha. It is the language of being the Buddha that is being persuaded. It's the wisdom of the Buddha path. The other name for it is Tantrayana. Tantra in Buddhism, in Sanskrit, means continuum. It's the continuum path. And seeing that there is this continuum, and as we've been talking about, there's valleys and there's mountains. There's zeniths and there's naders. There's times when it's going very nicely. There's times when it's got a lot of interruption in it, and so on. And being able to know how to deal with all of that is the wisdom, is being able to negotiate all that. We say that we are the engineers of our lives. We gave ourselves this life, this gift of life. We gave it to ourselves. We chose this. That's another discussion for another class, but now here we are. We were the architects of this. We put ourselves through school and did all the things and everything. And now we have to engineer our way through it all the time. We have to make adjustments all the time. We had this great plan for this Taj Mahal of my life, but that didn't quite work out. Now I got to engineer things, and it looks like this Rube Goldberg kind of a thing now that I've had to engineer my life to be. But that's what I had to do to maintain the balance and maintain the equipoise, maintain the, my sense of understanding of things. So all this, you see, falls in is the Vajrayana, the secret mantra vehicle. So it's expressed here this way. It says, we enter the mandala of the deity and follow the pith instructions of the spiritual teacher. We receive the empowerments and the liberating instructions. So what does this mean? Up to this point, the Hinayana was instructional. We're getting instructions from the Buddha. We're getting instructions from the teachers. This is what you got to do to be a good person. You have to take care of yourself. You have to commit. You have to be virtuous and everything. Here's all these rules. Here's the vows you need to take. It's all well defined for you. Then we go into the Mahayana. Now we're opening up into the mind, and we're beginning to experience these things that are beyond just being a physical human being and a intellectual human being. It's being a spiritual human being. We're really going into meditation, and we're learning that and so on. Now we're learning what it is to be a Buddha in the Vajrayana. We're having Buddha experience. We're having glimpses of what it is to be an enlightened being. They're not stable. We may have a glimpse that lasts like that, but that finger click there will change our lives. We can suppress it. Once we have that, it's there. We may suppress it, but we can also try and make it real, be able to understand it more and more, so that we have that finger click, we have that epiphany, if you will, that glimpse. We have it wider and we have it deeper, and we have it more often, and that becomes a vision. It becomes our way of life. That experience of being an enlightened one, of being a Buddha, although it lasted just that quick, now becomes a vibrant guiding part of our lives. So what this means is they express it as the mandala of the deity. The mandala is like a palace. It's like a house, a home. And within this home, within this palace, are all these contributing factors and contributing other people or deities that got us to there. It's like a family. And some live on this level, and some are on this level, and some are on that level, and there's different sides to it. So this mandala is a metaphor for this, for our life, for our Buddha field, for what it is that we've created for ourselves. And we learn this through experience. Sometimes we need very, very specific instructions from a teacher to say, it's this, it's not that, you need to do this, very clear, precise, simple instructions called pith instructions. But the point is that it is our experience that takes us there. Nobody can give it to us. We can't read it in a book. We have to experience it for ourselves. All this is leading up to that, is helping us to build our mandala, to visualize our mandala, that it's part of Avalokiteshvara, it's part of Shenrezig, it's part of Manjushri, it's part of Green Tar, it's part of all these deities, but it's also part of all these other beings that we've met along the way that now we are recognizing in different ways, because we've recognized many deities, or we've met many deities, but maybe not recognized them as deities. Sometimes you may, be in a house party with some people, family, or maybe some other, and there's a 5-year-old kid. And this 5-year-old kid says something that just tore right into the heart of you, that just meant something so powerful to you that it became transformative. Where did this wisdom from this kid come? Well, the point is, we're all spiritual beings. And these things can come out of us at any time. And we can recognize these things at any time. And part of the experience of that recognition is being in the Vajrayana. So I know it sounds, preposterous maybe. But yet, this is the dynamism of what it is. And we choose, somebody was talking about making choices today. It's making choices of what it is that we pay attention to, what we remember, and what we begin to find meaning for, and be able to move with the new meaning, knowing that that's likely to change somewhere else along the line. Because we always say, one man's ceiling is another man's floor. So our floor, our ceiling, but then we're going to break through the ceiling, and now that becomes our floor. So it is constant change. This is samsara. So the wisdom is recognizing this and recognizing that we are in control. We have to seize control. Seize control through wisdom, seize control through compassion, bodhicitta. So it's not the kind of control that, like having a train tracks or something like that. It's more ethereal than that. We are transcending our human nature. So we're in control of that. Either we allow ourselves to be pulled down and remain in our human nature, or we allow ourselves to rise and transcend our human nature into that part of our lives that we have to experience, that we haven't, but we've been there many times, because we've said we've died many times, and we've been born many times. And where is it that we go in between our birth and our death? We go to reality. We're in a reality now, but we're only seeing one part of it. We only see this one part that we can, in these three dimensions. But in this other part of reality, then, is beyond our comprehension as human beings, but we can experience it. So this is all the Vajrayana, is recognizing, bringing that in, recognizing that, understanding that. There's a lot of intellectualization that goes with that because of our propensity to want to know in a human way. So we begin to categorize everything. Ed has said this a number of times, says, well, there's these lists, and there's 4 of these, and there's 10 of these, and there's 6 of those, and everything. Yeah, and it's all the intellectualization, it's all the organization of all this stuff that we encounter as being human beings. Then we experience something that is beyond our comprehension, but we bring it back into our minds, and then we start trying to organize it again. There's a joy associated with that. It's not a labor of difficulty. It's a labor of love. And there actually becomes, the real joy is when you just let that go. When you just abide in the sunshine, you just abide in the wisdom, you just abide in the love. You don't have to know all these details. You just have to know loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And we can express that in everything that we do every day and so on. So in order to be able to understand this Vajrayana, there are these, I said, pith instructions, and it's all part of what's called the empowerments. In Tibetan, it's called the Wang. And these are the initiations. And these things have been handed down for generation, and generation, from teacher to disciple, who then becomes a teacher to the next disciple, and so on like that. And it is instructions and explanations of what this pathway is. And in this way, it is like a train. It is like a locomotive that is being put on tracks. And our destination is enlightenment, and we want the train to get there. We want the locomotive to get there. However, there's all these detours. If we were in our own vehicle, if we were in a car, or we were walking, or we were on a bicycle, we'd be going along to get to this place and meandering and wandering and taking wrong turns and getting sidetracked and detours and calamities that happen along the way. But there is this track that we can follow that will get us there safely, quickly, efficiently. And we receive the instructions, the empowerments, to be able to know how to navigate that. And if we get lost, if for some reason we decide to leave the locomotive and start walking on our own, or getting on a bicycle or a car, and we learn how to navigate it on our own. That it's not just this automatic thing that takes us there. We learn how to do it on our own. The first time we do it very, very, very by the book. But then after that, we do it another time. And this time we start, let me try this, let me try that. And we start doing different things and everything. And our experience becomes richer because of it, because we're having more experience. You know, it's got more nuance to it and so on. There's more understanding. There's more people that we can help because there's more wisdom that we have in being able to understand this that helps other people and so on. We recognize more. It's not just as focused as it might have been the first time or the second time. So we open ourselves up to that too. So we learn why we're doing things and we learn how we're doing things. So the reason why it's called secret mantra is because it's very susceptible to confusion. If you were to explain this to somebody who had no idea, had no initiation in this and everything, they would listen to this and they may be severely put off by this and think that you're mad and this whole system is crazy. You know, and they go around and they disparage and talk about it to other people, saying this is not what I was looking for. This is not good. This was foisted upon me. So we're very careful about who we discuss this with. So we keep it secret. It's not that it's meant to be protected, because it's indestructible wisdom, but it's misconstrued, and by being misconstrued, people get their own emotions as a result of it if they're not prepared for it. So the secrecy is we keep to ourselves. We talk with our Dharma brothers and sisters, and we talk with our teachers about it. It's not that we keep it completely secret, but we need to be able to express it to ourselves and to these other people so we can understand more and more about the nuances of what this all might be. So not everybody is capable of understanding it. Some people are better suited to remain Hinayana. Some people need that structure, and they need to stay in that structure and that discipline, and they will be happy, and that's where they need to be. Some people need to move out of that, take that discipline with them, and develop the mind, develop the mindfulness, develop the two truths, develop, bodhicitta, working and helping for other beings and so on. Some people are very happy to stay with that. It's very devotional. It's devotional to the Dharma. It's devotional to the teachers, to the lamas. It's devotional to the brothers and sisters that we're helping and so on. Our devotion is for our practice, for all of them and everything. And that becomes the core of our motivation is our devotion. But then there are some people who want to know, who want to be able to help others in more profound ways for more and more people. So people will go to their levels, but we need to accept those who wish to stay at whatever level they're comfortable in. And we may change over a period of time. We may start out in Hinayana, which we should, and we may stay there for the rest of our lives, or we may stay there for 20 years and then gradually get our way to the Mahayana and then stay there for 20 years and then maybe go to Vajrayana the last 2 or 3 years of our life or something like that. Or maybe lifetimes. We spend lifetimes in Hinayana. We spend lifetimes in Mahayana, and then we spend lifetimes in Vajrayana. We're not bound by any ideas of time or space or bodies or anything like that. There's an analogy with the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Hinayana, and the Vajrayana. There's a medical analogy. If you know you're sick, really sick, you go to the hospital and you check yourself in. And while you're there, people come caregivers come, people are testing you and trying to find out what's going on, and maybe they isolate you, you know, because they don't know what you have, and they don't want anybody else to get contaminated with it. They want you to be protected, you know, so they keep you in a certain place in the hospital where they're doing all these things and so on, and they're helping you to get well at this fundamental stage. But then the nurses come in, and the nurses start making you comfortable. They start bringing you food. They start, you know, taking care of your body needs. They make sure that you're clean. They make sure you're comfortable and so on. And they're looking out for you and so on like that. They're there to help you and to be able to help you to get better. Maybe you just need rest, or maybe you need medicines and so on. And they're dispensing the medicines and making sure that you take the medicines when you need to and so on. And then there's the doctor who comes in and who examines you and who takes all the, you know, pieces of information that were relayed to them from when you first came into the hospital and what the nurses have told the doctor. And the doctor has all the wisdom of the training and all the experience to be able to make a diagnosis and to be able to give you the medicine that you need. So entering into the hospital is the Hinayana, the discipline. The Mahayana is the loving devotional nursing care of the Mahayana that the nurses are giving you while you're in the hospital. And then the doctor, of course, is the one who has the wisdom to be able to process all these pieces of the puzzle to be able to give you the correct medicine, to help you to heal yourself, to be able to overcome your illness, your ignorance, your desires, your hatreds, your jealousies, and your prideful greediness, all those emotions, to be able to overcome that, to now become a healthy, fully realized human being. So what differentiates those are their practices, the way in which they approach enlightenment. They all can lead to enlightenment, but what differentiates them is their approaches and what they contemplate, how they develop their practices along the way and so on. Any questions or comments?
In some ways, this sounds like a progression. I mean, you go to the hospital and, you know, first they give you tests, isolate you, and then you get the loving care, and then you get the guy who can put this together. I mean, it sounds like you're progressing through stages.
Exactly.
And
we become the one who's doing the testing. We become the nurse, and we become the doctor.
But it just taking the analogy now back to, you know, the way you laid out the three vehicles, they sound like a progression too. In other words, I acquire the discipline, and then I have the capacity for the intellect, and then I have I mean, it sounds like I progress 1, 2, 3 to different stages, but at the same time, you're saying is, if I understand it, that I can get there in any one stage. I mean, I only need one, the three vehicles all go to New York. So I can get there on one level, I'm hearing I can get there on a bicycle. But at another level, I'm hearing it's a progression from discipline ultimately to wisdom.
Well, it is a progression. The one on the bicycle has to go to the Mahayana to get there and has to go to the Vajrayana eventually to get there. But it's going to take a much longer time.
All right, but
So
get there, he's got to go at all three levels.
Eventually we have to go through the three levels. We can get glimpses of it at any level, at any time. We can get glimpses of it. But to be stable in it, then we have to give up the ego attachment that is prevalent in the Hinayana.
Okay.
And then in the Mahayana, that's one of the big discussions that a lot of the monastics will have, a lot of the intellectual Buddhists will have. Can you have enlightenment in Hinayana? Can you have enlightenment in Mahayana and in Vajrayana? And they'll have for 2,000 years they've been arguing about this.
Right. Well, thanks for laying it out with the analogy. That helps.
You're welcome. Yes. Jackie, it might have been a lot for you to hear in the first time here. What do you think of this?
I feel like I jumped into the 8th session of something. But some of it I actually can relate to, just because I've been a member of the Soka Gakkai for several years, so I'm kind of listening to some of the terms and how it's
right.
Yeah.
That's Pure Land, isn't it?
Pardon?
Pure Land. Have you heard that expression? Pure Land, Mahayana.
Soka Gakkai is Nichiren.
It's Soka Gakkai is Nichiren Buddhism.
Okay.
So that's But
so you're familiar. So you were saying you were familiar with some of it.
I'm familiar with some of it. Yeah. Like we have the concept of 3,000 realms in a single moment, which is kind of what you were saying earlier in the discussion about everything at all. Everything is kind of omnipresent. It's all at once.
Right.
Yeah.
So all the way. So the differences are the way in which they intellectualize it.
I think so. Yeah.
Because we say that the ultimate reality, the ultimate truth, is beyond our ability to be able to express it. It's beyond human, beings to be able to comprehend it. We can only experience it.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's. I'm interested in attending more of these and maybe going back to look at some of the videos that you have from some of the earlier discussions.
Okay. Yeah, that would be a good thing to do, but we can start a new class of 101 from the beginning too. So we may have to do that on another night.
Sounds good.
Good. Okay. Anybody else have a comment or question?
Lance, does it need to be, can I just ask more of a general question?
Sure.
So I took a class on, I know you've mentioned you've done this before, transcendental meditation.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to have the opportunity to go through that process and then have a compare and contrast for the way I'm meditating now for part of my current practice, and then having the transcendental meditation added into that. And I actually can see the benefit of both as tools to help individuals. But I wanted to say, like, as a point of just observation, they said, hey, like, maybe take a break from the current way you're practicing, so you don't confuse the methodology, right, of how you're practicing while you're trying to learn the differences. And it's funny, so I took 3 days. They asked me to take 3 days, and I really missed the experience I have with my already established meditation practice. It was because I have gotten so comfortable with recognizing what's happening, like, without having to go back to like a mantra practice where you're repeating, those mantras. I actually found value now, like, enabled us to see the different sort of opportunities to meditate in the way that I already had been practicing, because my day is actually a lot easier with recognizing the, if you will, the ridiculousness of my thoughts, like, in recognizing and actually watching them occur and the emotions attached. So it was an interesting experience. But what I want to say is the transcendental, because it's so, like, systematic, it's highly prescribed, the procedures, like, in which they guide you through. I was able to actually, for the first time, I think, identify that moment of transcendence, like, very briefly, and I never had felt that before. And I was just curious if anyone else has had a transcendental meditation experience comparison where you could identify, like, distinctly for just even a millisecond, I think I just transcended the craziness of my monkey mind for like like just a second. Or I don't know, Lance, if you have those opportunities or experiences you would describe, but I found it really, in looking at the tools in our toolkit to help us accomplish the mind or work on our minds. I was just trying to talk out loud in relative to the conversation tonight about the different pathways and leaving the acts of virtue and then getting into what's up here. I don't know, I just wanted to put that out
Well,
there.
no, I think it's great. And, there are times when I go back to early meditations that I did before, I really got into the Buddha Dharma, and they're very powerful. And there's a time when I would like to share them with everybody. But it's going to be the kind of thing, we'll make an announcement, but everybody's got to get in on time. Everybody's got to
Right.
be willing to do it. And it's really, really good, but it's very, very guided at the same time, and you can feel a shift in the energy as you do this. And it's very powerful, and it can last for a long time. You can take it with you, so to speak, in other meditations that you do, because it is good for a particular experience, but then there's other experiences through other traditions that have other fruitions to them, which are very good too. So and that's what we've been trying to do on Friday nights, is to have different practices that we've been doing, to say, okay, here's the academics, but here's actual practice when we're trying to do this. And many people, we do Thursday night, we do Medicine Buddha. Many people have transcendent experience on Thursday nights with the Medicine Buddha. Having done it several times, we've been doing it for months now, and every week, and people are beginning to really report that they're really having great experience with it.
Lance, is in sort of transcendental meditation, let me ask you, just for my own clarity, is there attaching to the mantra itself, is that a problem? Like, getting attached to going back to the mantra, or it doesn't matter though, or does it not matter? It depends on the outcome of using the technique.
Mantra is a tool. The mantra is a tool. The mantra, the Sanskrit definition of mantra is a mind protection. That's what mantra means, a mind protection. Because as you're reciting the mantra, if you're really doing it properly, you're using your wind, you're using your body to make the sound, and you're using your intellect on what the meaning is of the sound. And then as you do that, when they come together, they intersect with each other. And then it's like a key opening up the lock. which is your spirit, which is your heart. So the mind protection. So there are times when you don't need to do the mantra, but if you get lost in thought or something like that, if thought comes in and it's not going away, then you go back to the mantra to restore your mindfulness, to get your heart to open up again, because you lost it for a time. It's a tool.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Is that what you're trying to say?
I guess it's more, I guess, like, and maybe I'm having like my right version of like an abstract question that where Gary had for his earlier, where I'm getting into the outcome, or the goal is to um, use these mechanism or processes to kind of I don't want to use the wrong semantics here, but deal with your mind, right? Like the derivative issues that our mind causes us, and our thoughts, and um, the function of each sort of methodology and accomplishing that. Maybe, and I'm right now, it's new to me, Lance, so I'm intellectualizing it, right? Like I'm thinking about it,
Well,
like
that's
you
right.
said. Yeah, I'm
That's
thinking
exactly
about it.
right. And then you gotta answer the question, what is mine?
Right. Right. Exactly. Um,
And does that become another obstacle to cling to grasp at, and to become jealous of, and all those other things? Does that just become another object of attachment? Mind.
mhm. Okay. Thank
And
you.
that's why we say that the experience is non-conceptual.
Mhm,
It's inexpressible. And
mhm.
we bring it back, and then we begin to try to express it, at least to ourselves, and we start qualifying it and all these other things. And then and what we need to do is just start living it. And then we become simpler, we become happier, we become more joyous, become more balanced, we live in equipoise. All those things. We don't talk as much. We don't need to talk as much. We don't need to have all the things, it becomes, everything becomes simpler. Are the things that we observe that are the changes of having that experience.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. The question, can we attain enlightenment in this lifetime? And we've talked about this in some of the classes where we talk about the tree, and when we talk about the nundra, we talk about the lineage tree, and can we have this enlightenment in this lifetime? Can we become Buddha in this lifetime? We can have glimpses of it, no doubt. Can we stabilize it to become Buddha in this lifetime? We can, but what's the reality of that? But does it make a difference? The experience, the real thing is being on the path to be able to achieve that. In our own time, we will achieve it.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. So, if you have questions about this, write them down. We can talk about them anytime. We can talk about it during the week or whatever. But we're going to go through this a number of times. This isn't the last time that we're going to discuss this. So maybe the first time that we've heard it in this context like now, but we do this over and over and over again. And that's the point of the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma, is being able to repeat this. This is the genius of the Buddha, to be able to devise this system by which we can be exposed to this, we can learn this, we can contemplate this, and we can use this to transcend our human nature and have that enlightened experience. So it's a lifestyle. It doesn't end one day. Yeah. And if we have lifetimes, we bring it back with us in our lifetimes. And the good fortune that we have right now to be here now is a fruit of the work that has been done in our lives as we know it, and then lives that came what seemed to be the past. That we're all vibrations of all that. We're all appearances of that. We're all displays of that. So there's a lot to be grateful for. All right. Thank you very much. Unless there's another question or comment, we'll do our dedication prayers. So, Michael, you're Umze tonight.
The lineage dedication prayer.
On page 18.
Dorje Chan, Talopa,
Naropa,
Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharma Lord Gampopa, Bhagmadrupa, and Lord Rinkumpa, please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessings of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I might not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessings of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I bear, may the merit I share bear fruit. By the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drinkumpa Ratnashri, who is omniscient Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise even for a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. And through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om. Ah. Hom. Om.
Om.
Ah. Hom.
Om.
May my
Om.
body. Ah. Hom. May my body,
Body,
speech,
speech, and
and
mind.
mind become inseparable from the body,
Body,
speech,
speech,
and mind
mind.
of all the enlightened ones.
Thank you very much. Thank you.